just repeating the question? Do you have time or are you driving?
I'm actually there. The ferry was late, so I was hoping to be home by now, but now it's my turn to go. So I'm happy just to write the comments down.
Okay.
Okay, is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. And if you could do that so that we can look at it before the next meeting, is when you can, that would be great. Thank you for that.
Okay, yeah.
Brian.
Sandy, in regard to Kathy's second question about Kaufeld and the CART report.
Brian just locked up on my computer.
Decided to have a separate, I guess, a special meeting on Kaufeld and ag policies. So that's yet to come.
Yes, we can answer that question now. If you're still able to listen, Kathy, I don't know if you heard that, but there's several things happening based on the CART report. One was a recommendation for a reserve study, and we're getting ready to launch that, and that will be talked about during this meeting. So that's an important piece of it. We are, what were the other elements? Oh, ag policy. So staff is working on a draft agricultural policy for all of our preserves. And it's on an future agenda item coming up this summer. They put a team together and they're drafting a policy and they're bringing it to the commission to discuss. So maybe we would be ready to discuss that at the August meeting by then. So we're trying to pull these various pieces together, and then the plan is to have a larger, more focused community meeting focused on Kaufeld Farm Preserve. It might be an evening meeting. It would be something extended beyond our standard meeting. We haven't exactly honed that down. Okay. All right. So did that answer that question about the CART? What are we doing? I think so. You're driving, you're probably busy. Okay, Chair and Commissioners reports. Any commissioners have a report? No. Okay. I don't have anything to report additional. Probably it would be talked about in the outreach portion. Okay, and so next up is Christine Minnie, our council liaison. Has joined us a little bit early, so we could go ahead and have Christine give her report.
Hi, good morning.
Morning,
Christine.
I'm in a car too. It always feels a little strange. I'm off island. You always wonder if people are going to walk by and wonder what you're doing. I suspect that everybody's pretty used to this, seeing people in cars talking on their cell phones now. And thanks to COVID, I mean, I can be on the mainland and in a parking lot and in a land bank meeting at the same time. So I guess that I should be really grateful. Thanks for letting me be here.
Sure.
I have a few really fantastic, well, I think just more, solid items to report than typical. The first will be, I think that San Juan County proclaimed Plastic-Free July at our first July council meeting. And this, I just want to let everybody know, is a global movement to inspire and educate people to take plastic waste into thoughtful consideration. And I can only speak for myself in saying that I have been paying attention and trying to make better decisions. And it's pretty stunning how much plastic lives in our life. Oh, that reminds me, I was also at a town council meeting yesterday, and they're going to start and of course, this is just for the town of Friday Harbor, but as all the same, it's as important as can be, a plastic recycling program for really clean, like the cellophane type plastic that you would, unwrap. It usually covers large boxes and or is, I don't know, holding boxes together. It's a pilot program. They're going to be like a test, if you will, for learning if the public will be receptive to isolating this particular type of plastic and recycling it. I think it's pretty fantastic. I don't have much to convey about that because I was just a recipient by listening in the meeting yesterday. I don't know much about it. Anyway, Council also recently elevated environmental resources from being a division of Public Works to being their own department, and appointed Kendra Smith, the new director. There will be some slight staffing adjustments. There will be, I think that there will be a couple of replacements. I think that there will be the addition of a position or two. And the results of this will be a stronger ability to address environmental inspection and compliance. And for the record, since I know we're being recorded, Tanya, this division has always, in my mind, lived like this as a department. So I feel really good about the motion forward for them. Council this week continued the moratorium on new vacation rental permits in all UGAs, hamlets, and activity centers. And this will extend into January of 22 at this point. That was my very, very first chair responsibility. And you do a very good job, Sandy. And you are one of my, you are definitely one of the chairs that I pay a lot of attention to. And I have to say that I think it actually went pretty well. And I'm glad to have had the experience. So now when I'm real chair, I know that, I have some experience under my belt.
Yeah, nothing to be afraid of.
I know. It's interesting that you can be, but at the end of the day, it's pretty okay. Last but not least, I do believe it is in heavy consideration, and I think it's going to be very true that our first in-person council meeting is going to be just this next Tuesday, July 20th. It will be hybrid to whatever technological degree we can establish it. I think that it will be an interesting meeting, to say the least, but I really look forward to it because I have not yet had the opportunity to be with both of my seatmates at the same time. And I think that's it for me.
Great, thank you. Is there a county-wide policy or support on having hybrid meetings in the future? Are they all going to be public, or what? I mean, I know they're all public, but are you striving for all in person or to have in person with hybrid? What's the goal?
I can only speak for council meetings at this point. The conversation in my world has not grown beyond that. And I think that it's safe to say that the community, potentially even, the nation at large, is very hopeful that meetings will stay hybrid. And for us, to be hybrid will be far more successful to encourage participation given our constraints with the ferry and living on separate islands. And I think that the conversation is and will be developed as we sort of enter into this new phase, but there is no policy currently.
Sandy, I believe I heard John Kane say the other day in the department head meeting that it's a requirement to continue at least the hybrid option at this point in time, statewide for public meetings. But I'll check in with him and we'll figure out exactly what the guidance is at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, it's true that the governor at this point does still require the ability to join remotely. So I think that, the bigger conversation is, further into the distance when the requirement isn't there based on pandemic, but is there based on the ability for it to be a better circumstance for all involved.
Great. Thank you. I have a question for you. I heard this last week that Erica Shook is resigning from department. Is that
I will confirm that she is, and that is going to be one of our biggest challenges in the next 6 months. Not only losing her, but replacing her. And I suspect that we definitely have a lot of work ahead of us. We have jumped into that heavily because I do believe it is going to be a challenge to replace her. But I will confirm, yes, that is true.
okay? Thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Like we're good. Enjoy your mainland day.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Christine.
Okay. Financial, time for the financial update. Aaron.
Morning, everybody. First place I would like to start is a REIT update. The month of June was our second highest month of REIT ever at 882,000. There were a lot of sales in the month of June. We had 79 sales that provided us with REIT, as opposed to the rest of the year so far is all sat in the 50s to high 50s. So June was just a big month of sales overall. To this date, for the month of July, we're sitting at 224,000. It is a little bit low, but it's the first half of the month. Major holiday here in July with July 4th going on. Doesn't indicate anything halfway through a month, just something to reference, given the fact that a lot of the other months have started so strong. So it'll be interesting to see where July turns out. That puts us at a REIT here of 3.2 million to date for year-to-date REIT. So numbers are high, and that is something that we will keep in focus here when we look to have an amendment later on in the year. So into the financial statements, we'll start with the Conservation Area Fund combined financial statement. Some items of notice on the balance sheet. The current assets, H11, has increased by 743,000 in the second quarter, bringing the total to just under 5.8 million in total assets. LGIP rate, which is no surprise here, has dropped to a 0.08% compared to June 2020 of last year, which was not a whole lot better, but 0.37%. So there isn't too much coming in from LGIP at this point. Under revenues and expenditures, just to reference again, our REIT, we are at 100%, 107% of budget. So as I mentioned, it's something that we should look into for the amendment later on this year, and 110% above year to date for 2020. I think that's something we followed along this whole year so far, is how we have been substantially higher than in the past. State grant revenue, H45, that is a reimbursement from RCO for the Channel Preserve acquisition. Donations from private sources, G48, $5,000. That was an unrestricted donation from a county resident. So that was very, very pleasant to see and receive. Acquisition costs, G56 for the acquisition of Katy Mountain Preserve, pushing our budget to the year 103%, almost 104%. Again, something we will pay attention to and adjust in an amended budget later on. And again, very, very strong administration administration costs at 2.39% over revenue, something that we take into high consideration and are very focused on keeping our admin expenses down here for the land bank. On to the stewardship fund, my financial statement. Cash for stewardship management fund has increased by 63,696. Again, noted the drop in LGIP. Investment interest under revenue and expenditures, again, is only with LGIP. We do not have any other investments besides LGIP at this point. We have reached budget for leased property. And again, these are just notes that I wanted to mention as something that we will focus on later on this year as well. Quarterly transfer was done in April as based on the revised 2021 budget. And we will be making the third quarter transfer in the next month or so. And property management, maintenance, expenditures, and site enhancement are both on pace with the current budget, sitting at both 44% and 54%. So activities on stewardship side are in line with what we were projecting at this point. There are substantial additions to that we'll be making here later on throughout the year, and we will address those accordingly. And that's all I have, and that concludes the financial statements, unless there are any questions.
Well, I have a comment about the revenue. We've outperformed 2020 in sales for each of the first 6 months. We've done that by between 100,000 and 500,000. So if we just equal 2020 for the next 6 months, we're going to end up with about $7.7 million in terms of revenue. And I think that that's incredible. And I think that that means that we ought to be looking at, some big projects. I think that we have some flexibility with regard to acquisitions. We may also want to consider, I don't know whether or not we still owe over $5 million in bonds. And I don't know what the interest rates are, and I don't know whether or not any of those can be prepaid. So I think that that may be something for us to also take a look at, because what we're earning from interest is so low that I'd like to see what the differential is as to what we're paying out on interest on the bonds and what we're earning from our funds.
Yes, I can definitely update you and send you information on how we're doing on bonds. I'm not, given being newer to land bank here, I haven't had a lot of time to dip too deeply into the bonds other than knowing, and I've, Lincoln might be able to correct me if I'm wrong here, but there is penalty for prepayment on those bonds. What exactly that penalty would be is something I would have to look into, but can give you a full update and report on what you're asking for.
I appreciate that. It may not be something that we can do or we want to do, but I do think that we should have that information given the low interest rate that we are earning.
Of course.
Yeah, I think our flexibility is pretty limited in that regard. Our debt was refinanced back in 2013, I think. So I'm not sure we have any more ability to do that, but we'll take a look at it.
So to further on Doug's comment, but add another element. So we are exceeding our projections significantly in income, and in addition to being that the pace of the island's development and number of building permits that are increasing. I don't have the numbers, but it's a big jump. So yes, acquisitions would be important to try to protect more important areas, but I would also like to know what are what big stewardship projects could we undertake to, instead of, and I'm not saying that we're just hitting the bare minimum, I still don't really have a handle on it, with our wish list of stewardship, and we're hitting the important priorities, but are there some other significant projects that would help us reach ecological goals? That's not necessarily to be answered now, but I just would like to put it out there, and maybe the stewardship staff could, so that even though something isn't currently budgeted for, maybe we have the option to do an amendment and tackle something. I realize people time is the other part. Just because we have more income doesn't mean that we have staff available. Maybe it's contract work, but just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, Sandy, I think that's definitely something to look at. And you're right, the problem is more what our capacity is from a personnel standpoint. Adding big projects is difficult unless we do a fair amount of planning for it. So we'll certainly be looking at that in budgeting for the coming year or 2 years. And there's plenty of opportunity to spend money on stewardship, that's for sure.
Well, and I'm sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Just a quick comment. Staff capacity may be limited and in fact overburdened, but we can always contract stuff out.
We can, if you can find a contractor to do it.
Yes, there's that.
Got it. And the other thing to keep in mind with that is it's not just stewardship projects that will increase staff burden, but every time we expand a preserve or add a new preserve, we may need to, in the next coming acquisitions, say this one is going on the shelf, and and we're gonna just do stewardship, but public access is gonna be dialed down if that's one of the biggest pushes. So it's just something to think about as to not miss opportunities, but know that we'll have staff limitations for new preserves. But thank you. I wanted to thank Erin for including the page with the breakdown of expenditures on the various preserves that showed donations coming in and partnership and over time and by district, and wanted to just request that you modify. So that's really helpful to have. I've always wanted something like that. Modify it to where District 1 is first. Just kind of logically, I was looking, well, wait, this skipped. So District 1 first, and maybe call it District 1, but then have the little, qualifier of what districts they are. That would be the only. So District 1, 2, and 3. I think that's a really helpful chart to have going forward. So
Yeah,
thank
so
you.
as you know, this has been, there's been a lot of acquisition, a lot of partnership over the years, and this is definitely a project that, Lincoln had started, and then through discussion, we decided to, try and get as much detail into this report as possible. And as it be marked draft, there's a lot of stuff to sift through, and it's definitely a developing report as well. As we dive deeper into each one of these acquisitions and partnerships and grant funds. So who knows how long that draft will stay on there, but it is in continued progress. So
It's a great start. I think very helpful for all commissioners and new ones that will join in the future. So thank you.
thanks, Andy.
Okay, well, if no other questions for Erin, we are on to Lincoln's, the director's report.
Thanks, Sandy. So this is going to be short, as our discussion of acquisitions is entirely going to be in the executive session due to the state where we are on those projects. But I did want to just give you a little preview of a presentation I've been working on. And it started out being kind of a financially focused presentation. As I've continued to work on it, it's kind of evolved into trying to answer some of the questions we hear over and over again about the land bank and various aspects of it. So I was just going to take you through a few of the slides. I'm not really going to do the presentation for you, but just show you some of the material I've pulled together up to this point. I will share my screen. So I don't know if you all remember this meeting. This was a channel meeting on Lopez. This is just a shot of
Yes.
public meeting. This was one of our more vigorous ones, but critical comments that we've heard. So this is one that does come up fairly often about how much property we actually own. No, we don't own half the county. So this figure is actually a little bit off. We're getting closer to 5% actually, but no, it's not half the county. The tax roll question and creation of higher taxes. Another slide that I showed in the community presentations, but here it is again, updated with the fact that the taxable value of land bank preserves is less than 1/2 of 1% of the total. And then the idea of selling off preserves and what that might save property owners in taxes if you keep their seats the same, at $15 on a $500,000 property. But if you privatize preserves, you devalue the neighboring properties also. So that pretty radically reduces the savings. And this is one we put in the annual report last year. It'll be again this year, so this is updated. You'll see this in this year's annual report, at least that graphic part of it. But just wanting to show people that we do have the lowest tax rate in the state. If you move to these other counties and have a similar valued property, you'd be looking at this much increase in property taxes. It's just helping people to keep a little bit of perspective on this question. Also, something I've done, I did a few years ago about property tax rates and the percentage of land in private ownership. So that top graph that you see there, kind of interesting. You can see we're a real outlier in that our tax rate is very low, but there is a trend line there, which shows that with more private land ownership, taxes actually increase. With more public land ownership, they decrease. So it's really, there are other factors at work in this, but it's pretty clear that having more conservation land certainly does not mean you're going to increase taxes overall. So this is data from all of the counties around Washington state. I'm not going to get into that lower graph. I'm still trying to figure out how to use that. And this is just another portion of this about whether conservation, having more conservation increases taxes. Well, it increases values for surrounding properties, that's for sure. But there's also the question of cost of community services. And there have been hundreds of these studies done around the country. So I just pulled one out. This is from Williamstown, Massachusetts. It's hard to find anything that's really comparable for us, frankly, but all of these studies tend to show the same thing, namely that residential development generally does not take in as much revenue as it increases expenditures. So you're losing money as you continue to do residential development. Commercial, on the other hand, you do make money, and open space, you do make money because there's just far less services required. This is just an offhanded comment that Doug heard, kind of a crazy one, but you know, when you're walking around town and you hear somebody say this, you feel compelled to address it. Obviously, no, we don't take 15% off the top. It's 1%. And then the question of affordable housing. Well, this is the reality for us that despite the land bank owning property, there are still roughly 6,500 vacant parcels in the county. Another 3,000 could be created through division. The county council can increase density in urban growth areas. Town of Friday Harbor can increase density and annex neighboring parcels. We've been very careful about doing projects in urban growth areas, really focusing on just creating some pocket green spaces and doing some historic preservation in UGAs. So wanting not to interfere with the idea that as growth occurs, it's supposed to happen within the urban growth areas, according to the Growth Management Act for the state. So we've been careful not to kind of interfere with that process. And so what are the reasons we have a lack of affordable housing? Well, cost of construction is a big one. Competition from external buyers is also a big one. Every piece of property that comes on the market, you're going to compete against people potentially from other places. Lack of apartments, lack of year-round rentals, poor wages. The county is doing a lot to try and promote affordable housing from the 3 or 4 nonprofit groups that we have working on this issue all the time. The Opportunity Council being another player that's becoming more prevalent. They're looking at potentially using funds from the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee or lodging tax funds. The county purchased the Argyle lots, as you all know. And I did throw in there Homes for Islanders. I know they don't provide permanently affordable housing, but certainly they've been a big player in providing affordable housing in the immediate time period. So the bad neighbor one, we've heard this. The reality is that we've got 300 adjacent parcels, so we have about 300 neighbors. We've had 3 court cases. Each was about access to a preserve by easement over private property. They've all been settled. We had 1 case with a neighbor who cut trees down on our property. So we did get a settlement from them to make up for that issue. But more than that, we work pretty hard with our neighbors to be a good neighbor, from things like installing fencing and signing, working through encroachment. Usually that's encroachment of neighboring structures on land bank property. We help with maintaining private roads, eradicating noxious weeds, protecting native species, doing restoration work. When we go through our process of opening a preserve or the preserve management plan in general, we have public meetings specifically dedicated to that and go back and forth quite a bit with people on what we're looking at, what our plans are for that property. So there's a lot of opportunity for input. And then a lot of other concerns that we've worked through with neighborhoods in general. So I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to be a good neighbor. Last couple, and then this is not quite done, but just the table that you talked about earlier, I thought it was important for us to show the fact that of the money that we've spent, we've been successful at bringing in or helping to bring in at least $1, more than $1 for every dollar that we've spent. So that's money coming from other places outside the county that the taxpayers are not paying for. And we've worked really hard at doing that. And our administrative costs have been low. Aaron mentioned that, but over the life of the program, about 4.9%. And then we've also saved a significant amount of money for stewardship. So again, and I'll stop there, but just wanted to give you a little taste of how that presentation is going. I'm not really sure how to present it. I'm thinking that I'll do a recording of it so that it'll be out there and maybe posted on YouTube just as a way to have it for people to get access to if they need it. But I'll also be looking for other opportunities to present it in other places, in other formats. So I don't know if you have questions about that.
I think it's an excellent approach, Lincoln. Well done.
Yeah, I like it, Lincoln. It's very easy to digest with all the you know, limited text and a lot of visuals is really helpful. Who do you be showing it to? Who's their intended audience for this?
Well, that's a good question. I don't really know. I mean, my first inclination is just to do the presentation and record it and have it out there in case someone wants to look at it, or we can promote it. We can put the link on our website or in a press release or whatever we want to do. But it'll be available so that I could give it directly to organizations as the opportunity arises. But I'll certainly be looking for the chance to do that.
Yes, Sandy. I would. Something we can consider. We should talk about this in the communications committee. But there's something called explainer videos. That's the term used, and it's you know, little stop motion graphics. It's how you you've seen them all over. I can't really pull up an example right now, but that might be a more engaging way to present the information. And my neighbor a few doors down owns their own company. They actually were one of the ones who started those explainer videos, and they do those, and possibly they may be interested in you know, contributing to something like that. That might be more, I don't want to say that you're not fascinatingly engaging and riveting, but it might be you know, it just might be a better way to kind of communicate it quickly, and that could be shared. So
That sounds great.
Maybe before the next communications committee, I could find out some more information about it. But I think all the basis of work that you've done is good.
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk to people about ideas for different kinds of ways to present this information. Yeah, I know that, you know, my presentations are pretty amazing, but we can always do a better job. Yeah, no, it's really that's a whole profession, basically figuring out how to convey information. And I'm an amateur, so there you go.
I would make one remark in case Sandy's idea doesn't materialize. I think a number of portions of your presentation are excellent. The visuals with the pictures and the image and the concept, those slides to me are very quickly digested, and the facts where you lost me or you would lose me if I was in the audience, for example, would be that administrative cost page. Some of that just needs to be made bigger because, but anyway, so that's the difference between some of your previous pages and those others. It's just focusing on getting it down to what is our admin cost, or what are, you know, where are we partnering, just from a standpoint of making it bigger for the people over 60 to see it on the screen or in a presentation. But I think some of your earlier visuals were great, super fun. They get your attention. So yeah, kudos to you on that. I thought that was really good. Another career path.
Great. Fantastic.
Yes, really good work. Any other comments on that or questions for Lincoln? Okay, well, let's move on to the stewardship report. Who is leading that discussion?
Well, I had just a few things to mention about stewardship that seemed to kind of tail off what we were talking about ecological work. So I attended the Clean Water Utility meeting this last week. And the county's starting a groundwater study. It was delayed. Liz Lovelet had gotten the funding over a year and a half ago, but USGS study will look at collecting data, then doing the recharge estimates. They'll have a updated model for the bedrock aquifers, and then just trying to get a better idea about the water balance, recharge, and use. But some pretty interesting conversations among that group about how to do messaging to the public in regards to seeing the longer you can keep water on the land, how much drinking water is available in the summer, and making some of these connections about just wise use of resources. They also have quite a bit of funding from the Clean Water Utility, and some of their capital improvement projects are really within, I think there's 6 different areas where we have properties that overlap. So I think there'll be future opportunities for partnership to be creative about using other funds to meet ecological goals. And segueing off of that, the Department of Natural Resources recently identified Western Washington as a high priority for their forest action plan, which opens up pots of money for work to do here. We've already gotten some in the landscape scale restoration project, but there's more. And what I found interesting about some preliminary discussions there is that, we ranked really high in Western Washington, primarily because they're predicting that we'll see the highest increase of drought in the next 20 years. And then also related to some ecosystems of concern. So I guess the more we can do to understand their criteria and what other projects are happening in this area, I think it'll really help us meet our ecological goals and piggyback on important messaging and find more partners. So it's just a nice week of all this big stuff that seems to be happening for our area environmentally.
Great information. Good. And that's exciting. The groundwater study, long time coming.
I guess I could make a brief update on the Caulfield lease rate and reserve study. Fred Strickland and Associates out of Gig Harbor is going to be starting on that anytime now. The contract's circulating for signature. And again, he specializes in agricultural property evaluations, and is going to be working with one or more local contractors to evaluate the infrastructure at Caulfield Farm Preserve. He's going to interview a number of farmers, farm lessees, farm lessors in the county, and do a broader, evaluation of lease rates locally and regionally, and summarize all that in a report that includes cost estimates over the next 10 years for maintenance, of the infrastructure, and a base lease rate. So we should get that report sometime in October, probably mid-October.
Mid-October, okay.
One thing I wanted to bring up about that, in the last commission meeting, we had some conversation about getting a market value for the farm. And in thinking about that question and in talking it through with the appraiser too, it really hit a very good point, which is namely that it's unclear what that's actually going to be worth to have that number, mostly because as long as the life estate is present, it's going to have a very significant impact on value. the farm. And I think to the point where it would be probably a big mistake for us to sell this property with a life estate still in place, because you'd just be sacrificing a lot of value. And since those numbers, the appraisal numbers, are only going to be good for a short period of time, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense for us to go through that exercise at this point in time.
Yeah, I agree with Lincoln. We had a discussion, I think earlier this week about it. And I was the one that was kind of pushing for the appraisal, but I agree with Lincoln. Valuation with the life estate, which I really hadn't thought through very well, and I should have, because I've been involved in that on at least 2 different occasions. And it's almost an impossible task. And so I think that the money would not be well spent to go forward with an appraisal at this time.
Good. So with that mid-October-ish date of having the reserve study report and lease rate report, does that pushes out our, do we need to rework our timeline? I believe we need to rework our COP timeline, and that would also push out the bigger meeting and discussion that we're going to have, because we wanted to have all of the facts, I believe. Is that right? Maybe we still have we could have a meeting about discussing, yes, Brian, I'll be right there, discussing that the agricultural preserve policy. That's, we could go ahead and get that part done and then dig into this later. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Brian, go
Sandy,
ahead.
I don't think that necessarily pushes back our entire timeline. I mean, the lot of the valuation study is about determining a fair lease rate should we decide to lease the farm, and make sure that we make it equitable and that it works for the land bank, works for the public and the other farmers on the island. So that's kind of a second step after we've made a number of major decisions that are still before us. So I think we go ahead without waiting for the agricultural study. I don't think it changes much.
That we go ahead with what?
With our timeline. And you know, our meetings on not only agricultural policy in general, but our decisions with respect to Kafeld Farm.
So
We have a lot to discuss before the final.
yes, we do have things to discuss. My understanding, and maybe some other commissioners could weigh in, was that we wanted, before really determining, anyways, I'll let someone else speak. I'm doing a lot of talking. Any other commissioners want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I'll say something about that. So I thought that one of the important decision-making tools about how to proceed with Kafeld is going to be what the cost of that owning that and leasing it will be to the land bank, and whether that makes sense to do in long term versus another alternative like selling it. So even if we don't have an assessment of what the market value would be to sell it, I don't know that that's important, but having an understanding of what the actual cost of leasing it, I think is going to be a major deciding factor. We had a whole discussion at one of the commission meetings about how the deciding what to do solely based on the resources there and the agricultural potential is not sufficient enough to move forward with the decision. And I still think that I'm not sure where that information will come, but having an idea of what the actual cost is, I think is very important for any initial discussion.
I would agree with that, with Miles, because I think having a good understanding of what it would cost to maintain the infrastructure or portions of the infrastructure, which, you know, and looking at the lifespan of some of the pieces on that property, will go into us trying to figure out what is a fair lease arrangement. I don't think I just think we need that information to see what's, so we can choose how far in we're gonna go. So I don't have that timeline in front of me. It's with my other last month's notes. So I'm wondering, this October date, did we expect the report in September? Like how is this, how much is this pushing back our timeline?
We had originally expected the report in September. Combination of the consultants' availability, lining up subcontractors, and just the contracting process delayed that somewhat.
Wow. Yeah, that was major construction in Peter's office. So then I guess my question is, and then the ultimate goal was to be able to put out an RFP originally in October, I guess. So are we just pushing everything back a month, and is that going to be too much? Or do we need to compress what we get done once that report comes in? Again, I apologize, I don't have that timeline, so I'm kind of guessing right now.
Well, I think since we're extending the lease through 2022, that gives us some more time to work with. So I don't think we're really, it's not that critical if we're a month or two behind.
That's what I kind of recalled, but I just wanted to make sure. So anyway, I
think so too.
I would go for waiting for the report before we.
I agree.
But I do think, Brian, that we have important things to talk about without drilling down into the details of Caulfield. We have the more general we have the more general agricultural policy and those kinds of things that will ultimately, once we get clarity on that, would help affect Caulfield. So it sounds like it's gonna all happen this fall. It just may be a month later or so than we talked about.
And can I make ask a clarifying question? So earlier, Sandy, you made a statement to Kathy Morris that there is a big meeting or a big community meeting coming up. So, which I think is great. What I envisioned for the big workshop meeting for the commission would be a commission meeting held in public, but not a public meeting with the commission. I think that's the first step, is for the commission to sit, digest the Caulfield Farm report, look at share our opinions of each of the 5 or 6 options that were presented, find out which ones we're taking off the table, look at the expenses. I see a lot of discussion just within the commission and staff, and maybe selected private individuals to help facilitate that. And then a public conversation would be after that, after we've started to narrow down what we think we're going to do. So I'm just asking if I'm hoping that's the intent, and not to open up this first meeting to public participation and discussion.
I miss what I meant. I didn't clarify. Hold on. My internet connection is unstable. This is the problem with the Zoom meetings. I didn't necessarily mean it was a community conversation. I meant that we would be holding our commission meeting maybe in the evening hours, or that we would have an extension beyond, like we have done an extended meeting. We need a longer amount of time to be able to dive into it. So I don't think that we have talked about facilitating another public conversation with the public, but I mean having our meeting in public. So I don't think that we've, yeah, okay, so that's what I
Thank
meant.
you. Great.
Okay, let's see. Where are we now? Where are, unless there's something else to talk about with stewardship, anyone have any other stewardship? Am I frozen?
No,
Nope.
you're good.
You're good.
I'm good. Oh, I see 6 people are frozen, so I don't know. I'm going to go ahead and call for a break. Then we'll take a 10-minute break
Okay.
and come back at 9:50 or 9:51.
Perfect. Thanks, Sandy.
Order back from. Yes, got it. Back in order. And so we'll move on to the outreach and volunteer report for from Tanya.
It's so fast. Let's see. I have a few notes aside from what was in the stewardship report. There's been some updates to the website. Amanda and I worked on hunting policy, or not policy, excuse me, information for the website. I know that she's been getting questions, and Doug as well. So there's now a page on the website under the heading of properties and maps that at the bottom we have hunting information. And then we'll, I think I'm gonna, once we have it finalized for this year, the information, I'll also add it to the preserve website pages. So you'll be able to find it in there as well. Doug has been working on a monthly topic series we talked about, or and he and the stewardship staff, we said, let's see, leaving out the middle. So I think there's about 5 topics, and once a month, it'll be more specific to the updates for Zylstra. And he will be featured as a, I guess, kind of like a guest column on San Juan Update. Tim Dusterud, who is the editor and owns San Juan Update, is willing to post that. So I haven't checked this morning, but I think it should be up either today or tomorrow. The first one is about water access, and it'll also be on our website under the news section. Also, stewardship staff at Turtlehead and also Turtleback and Turtlehead Preserves, Troy found some fire rings that had been set up for ready to go to be lit and dismantle them. So Sierra and I put out some messaging to social media as well as on our website about just reminding folks that there are no fires on preserves, land preserves, as well as the trust preserves. And hopefully people know fire risk is high right now anyway. And then we also have our intern starting next week. And I think hopefully, if Aaron's good with it, that we'll kick him off with stuffing the new buyer packets. He can learn more about the organization, and if he has any questions, we can start there. And then he'll just start working out in the field and various things that we can use help with, and also that appeal to his interest. He's in environmental science. Is that right? Environmental sciences major at Skagit Valley. So I think it'll be good. I've worked with him before. Not worked with him. He's about the age of my oldest son. And so he's a great kid. I think we're very lucky to have him, and hopefully he feels the same way when he's on here. And I think that's it. I mean, aside from, what was in the report. Does anyone have any questions?
Annual report, ETA.
Well, it's on the website. I don't have an ETA. I'm waiting to hear back from Sharon. There were some formatting between her design and then our initial at the publisher. So I think they got that all sorted out yesterday. And usually it takes a couple weeks between printing and then getting into the mail. When we're off the meeting, I plan to email her and double check. But my guess is then in the next couple weeks, it should start popping into post boxes.
What is the status of the Polis survey, what numbers of participation are we at? Do we know?
No, I mean, I've checked it a couple times. It does linger around 100 comments. So I think what Kai said is, oh, Krista Campbell's in the waiting room. The outliers get pushed, they get dropped off the questions. And then the things that are generating the most, I think, interest stay on. But Kai has not, I think he's waiting until the end. That was my understanding as far as participation, but I can check in with him and see. It seemed like when we talked to him last time, it's pretty easy for him to look that up. So I'll make a note and then I can send that around.
Yeah, I would know. I actually haven't sent it to my network of people yet. Still planning on doing that, and I'm just curious. Maybe just let
Also,
me know.
I checked in with the libraries this week, and they haven't responded yet, but just wondering how it's been going with them because they were posting notes. So for those that don't have internet access, there would be an opportunity for the community to use the computers there or internet access. But I haven't heard back. I'm sure they're busy with their summer programming, but.
Did we get an answer to the question about getting notified with new questions after you've taken the survey?
Oh, he did
Yes,
answer that. Did I not send that? I'm sorry.
I can't remember.
What Kai had, after talking to his mentor at Polis, they decided, or I think the mentor suggested that they were not going to do that after all because people could be getting a ridiculous amount of emails that were turned on every time somebody put something new. So
They were, yeah, unsubscribing, but they're allowed. He was going to put more of a explanation on the landing page that said you can come back and take new questions. And I don't see that he's added any more of a explanation on the landing page to explain the thing. Anyways.
Has everybody taken it?
Yes.
Well, I've taken it 35 times, so.
Good for you.
Just
That's a good idea. Well, I have taken it and I go back and check and I've added, what I found is that I thought it was going to make me go through the whole thing again. I wrote to Tanya about that, but now when I recheck, it brings up five remaining. Like just now, I just refreshed it and it says there's 4 remaining. So it's pulling up just the new ones.
The new questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
dropped off the call, so I don't know what you were asking, Sandy, but there hasn't been a huge increase. There's about 240 people.
Oh, that's what I was
So far.
asking. So
Yeah.
you're able to log in and see how many people?
Well, I think if I'm reading the website, I won't flip to it. If I'm reading the web display correctly, it has Group A has 193 and Group B has 38. There's numbers next to those.
Oh,
So my assumption was that's that group size. So it has gone up. It was under 200. So and there are more people sitting in Group A than there are in Group B by almost 4 times or more. Is that right?
Hmm.
I'm not doing the quick math. And so, yeah, so that's been very interesting. And the Group A people who are, it seems to be trending supportive of the land bank, the top 10 or 8 or 10 questions or statements that are coming to the top are showing a 95% agreement within that group about that statement. And I'm seeing in Group B, the statements where they have the most agreement within their group, generally their agreement is sitting at 75%. So they don't have as robust agreement on those key statements, except the last one where we are gorging ourselves. I can't remember what that one is, but they have 95% agreement on that in Group B. But the rest of their statements sit at 75 to 74 to 71% within their group. And Group A is more like over 90% on each of those high-powered statements. So
I hope we'll be able at the end to see where there's overlap between Group A and Group B. That was part of the goal, right? To see
Mhm.
where there was
That's my
a
understanding.
consensus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, where
right.
you'll find more a 50-50 split, you mean?
Where there would be certain statements that the majority of all of the people who take the survey agree. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so since we are very far from hitting the 500 mark and we're already halfway through the month, just encourage everybody to reach out to your networks and try to get it shared more. Yeah.
The feedback I continue to get from friends who, I did send it out to all my Facebook people, but I haven't done it to my email list. And that direct link is handier than, they get confused by that article, having it posted at the end of the article. It's just not clear. I keep getting that. And so if you are sharing it, I would share that direct link
to the page.
So I did update our landing page on our website after he gave us the direct link. And there are a couple, it's a very short introduction. It's the one that we worked on in the communications committee. And then there's an opportunity to the FAQ page, as well as going to the article if you want to read about Kai, or going directly to the poll to the discussion.
So
and
maybe
not having to go back to San Juan or the Island Sounder.
So maybe on our landing page, could it include those couple of explainers that say you can come back later on, revisit it, and comment on new statements? I don't know. There were a couple of things we asked him to do that I don't see that he did to help explain how the things worked. And so if he hasn't done it, maybe we could just have it on our landing page. So, and share that page.
Yeah, I would suggest sharing ours. And if people want to read more about Kai and the internship, his blurb, that opportunity is there. It'll take you to the Sounder. Otherwise, they can just create to the discussion. So I'll add that after we get off.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, anything else for outreach and volunteers? Reports? Questions? Tanya's doing a lot going on. Doing great.
I was wondering about the snap, crackle, pop of the utility wires in the hedge.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That in there.
Any update on that?
Oh, the tree?
That was in the stewardship report.
It's stewardship in the Diggs Park ornamental box elder in front of the office is interwoven with utility lines and recently made some popping and crackling sounds.
And tree is gonna get.
If you're not worried, I'm not worried.
Doug's trying to, okay, there he is.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an arborist take a look at it, and they were, there was nothing there that had them be like, we need to deal with this immediately, but definitely the trajectory was headed that direction. We could be doing something. And so we're looking at a couple different options right now. It is, I think it's mostly an emotional attachment for all of us to see that tree go as probably the likely outcome. That seems to be the trajectory that's expected. Does that answer your question, Alana?
Doug, we're having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah, I caught the gist of you're working on it and you're hoping the tree won't go down.
Yeah,
It need to be taken down.
I mean, basically, the tree's a box elder. They are not typically long-lived trees, but this one's gotten quite big. It's wrapped through the utility lines, so our arborist thought that maybe Opalco should clear the line. Opalco's preference is to just take the whole tree down. So we're kind of at that point trying to figure out, a way forward. If we proceed with that, then I think we'd really want to consider replacing it with a substantial tree. But that's where we are at this point. I don't think there's a huge risk right now, but it's, you know, it's an old tree. You can look right through it at one point. We'll continue figuring out what to do with it.
Tanya, there was I think there was a video being made about the land bank. I was curious what the status is on that.
Michael Noonan is still ticking away. He's pretty close. He has a couple more things on his list that he'd like to tick off. There's a lot of ticking. One, I think 3, and he's trying to organize with everyone. One is with Lincoln. I think another is maybe with Doug. He sent me an email. I'm supposed to nudge everybody. So, but we're close. And then he said it'll probably take him, oh, I hope I'm remembering correctly. I think he said 6 months to finish all the editing. I might be overestimating that, but we're close. We're close as far as the filming is going. And so I'll double check with him, but hopefully by January, we'll have something, or at least by next spring. He's got a lot of projects in the fire. He's very popular, and he really likes doing this. I think he's planning to also help the old military road trail here on San Juan Island put a video together as well. So definitely not someone sitting on his laurels. He's busy.
He is close to completing a video on Coho and on Jenny DeGroot and Coho at Coho Preserve. So that one, I think he's just got some final editing to do, but it's pretty good. It really shows what's happening there, and how we're monitoring for the fish and advocating for them and water flow and a whole variety of things. But it really carries you through what's involved with actually monitoring and tracking what's happening with that species.
Okay, so we are, if there isn't anything else for this portion of the public meeting.
Sandy, I'll just say one thing, since Krista reminded me with the Snap Crackle Pop. I did attend a recent Opalco board meeting. They asked representatives of conservation organizations to attend their meeting, as they're looking to radically expand their solar areas where they're putting solar panels. And they also were presenting at the council meeting. Just one thing to note, that they're thinking they need about 1,200 acres to put solar panels on to help us with our energy independence goals. I'm not at all sure what that means for the land bank. They have purchased some properties. They've had some issues with purchasing properties like in ag resource land, and whether putting up solar panels is consistent with an ag use. There can be some grazing under those panels and things like that. But I just note, because it's a significant amount of land, I'm confident they're not thinking that they're going to buy all of that land. So they're definitely going to be looking at places where they can put panels.
Okay. All right. So at this point in the meeting, we're going to enter executive session, the closed door portion of the meeting, to discuss acquisition of real estate. So I would ask the members of the public to go ahead and leave the meeting. We will be coming back into session at, says 11:10. I guess it might be earlier. I don't know. Anyways, the plan is to come back at 11:10 and adjourn, talk about any future agenda items, and adjourn at 11:15. So we'll just wait. Looks like everyone, am I right? Has everyone left?
Everyone's
Okay.
up.
Future agenda items. So do we have a running list that we want to run over
Well, we are going to talk about budget at the next meeting because we need to add money in for Higgins. And then we're going to begin talking about next year's budget. So we'll have some preliminary material for you on that. And also we'll be looking to bring back some ag policy work that we've done.
for next meeting? You think we'll have that?
I think so. I don't. We were going to get that kicked off this week, but both Charlie and Peter have come down with something. So
Uh-oh.
not
Mask
happening.
off, and now we're going to start getting sick
Exactly.
again. Okay. What about, we had talked about having a facilitated meeting when we do get into the full commission discussion about future of Kaufeld Farm. Is that my recollection? Does that sound right? That we talked about having a facilitator to help us come to consensus and work through all of the things. And I think someone was going to contact John, is his name?
Yeah, I haven't talked to John, but I can do that. And so we're thinking timing for that as being
It would be
October.
post,
no.
well, we would have the reserve study and have time to digest the study before we got into the conversation, I think. So I would think that if we had the reserve study by the October meeting, if we had it up, that we probably wouldn't be ready to talk about it. You know, we need a few weeks to work it in our schedule to
Okay.
discuss. I don't know. Wintertime, I guess, would be the thing. And then that does what I was saying about the timeline is it pushes, we're pushed a little bit on then coming up with what we're doing, what the initial request for proposal and all of that. So it feels to me like we need to have our timeline updated based on that. That was one question. And what else do we have? So ag policy. Maybe we need to look at our list and just I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure there are things.
Sandy, we had that at a certain point attached to the end of each agenda. Maybe we could
Yes,
start
have that
then.
again, so we're not blank.
Yeah.
The running list of potential, and we can see which ones rise to the top.
Right.
Okay, that's a good idea.
So do we know when we're going to start back with in-person meetings again? Council's
yeah.
doing it, seems like we could too.
In person, so what we talked about was in person, but hybrid. And so we wanted to figure out the place that we would have them on San Juan. Does it take place the same time as some other public meeting and we wouldn't have access to the technology or something like that? What was the?
Well, the council
location?
room, the council room is used by the planning commission on the same Friday of every month that we normally meet, I believe. Because that's that potential site for, which has all the technology, is not available to us if we stay with our same Friday. So we might consider changing the meeting day. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Yeah.
But only if the council can commit, or that office can commit to giving us that space kind of ongoing as a standing reservation.
The technology is something I wondered about. I mean, can we just do it if we each bring our laptop to the meeting?
I think you can do it if you each bring your own laptop, but then everybody's audio has to be turned off and you have to have one mic that picks up
Oh,
everybody. Because if
right.
everybody has their audio on,
Yep.
Background
hello.
noise.
Yeah, wow, yeah. Feedback.
It didn't seem like Christine was really sure about how well they were going to fare trying to do their meetings.
Yeah.
Maybe we should let them work out
Let them
the,
do one.
let them do one and work out the bugs and then see about, so that's pretty much our only venue for San Juan Island,
Yeah, I don't know.
only option. You said there's one on Lopez, Krista? Did
Well,
you say?
the Family Resource Center has that, has, I think, the needed technology that's the most current. Our library has that technology, but they're unwilling to let any group pre-reserve more than a couple of months in advance, so it's just not reliable enough. And the
Mhm.
fire hall's technology, it needs to be upgraded.
Okay. So,
The Orcas library has the ability to.
and there's a meeting room large enough, bigger meeting room?
I'm not really sure about the size of the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, the meeting room.
Aaron has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't see. Aaron, go ahead.
Well, it's more of a comment. I've been kind of listening to what other groups are doing. So it sounds like the MRC is just going to do quarterly in person. The conservation district's going to every other month in person. And some of this technology with, I was sharing, I guess the Orcas library has like an owl that can follow the room for who's talking. So maybe, I don't know, I can work with Tanya or something to put together a few options, but it would be nice to know how often you're looking at doing in person and if that's every month or maybe some kind of hybrid model.
That's another option would be to have one a quarter and rotate the islands as far as in person, and then continue this for the alternate months. It's an option. Yeah, I'd be open to listening to what staff thinks works out well for technology and doable and for maximum participation for accessibility.
Well, I'd like to hear a straw poll among the commissioners on that too. I mean, to me, despite I would like to go back to in-person meetings as much as possible, because there's still a certain amount of awkwardness in this, I think.
I like meeting in person, but I'd like to have the option for the public not to have to be there in person. That's more my focus.
Well, and I think that's what the governor is requiring right now.
Yeah. He's requiring that we do a hybrid?
I think that's what Christine said, is that
right.
we
So
have to be accessible by remote, because some people do not want to show up in person right now.
Yeah.
And they have to be accommodated.
Okay.
I thought his proclamation for the, stopping open public meetings or public meetings was still in place. So I wasn't totally clear how the hybrid was working under that, but maybe he's rescinded that proclamation. I just haven't. I don't know.
Okay.
I'll check in with John Kane and find out exactly what we need to do.
Okay. All right. And then what about our annual retreat? Are we thinking that do we have a running list of topics? Are we thinking about when John does, John is his name,
Howell.
facilitates, what's his name? John
Howell.
Howell facilitates the portion on Kaufeld Farm, which to me seems like that could expand to a whole meeting. Could that be like part one of a retreat, while we have him secured, and then are there other things for us to talk about? I don't know. Just throwing it out there. I know that's coming up in the fall.
Well, this
Or
is
winter.
a conversation topic that, well, at least Jim felt pretty passionate about, and was our response or strategy for either climate change resilience or climate change adaptation. So we had talked about it, and I don't know if it's worth having a bigger discussion about what we want to see, how that should look like for the land bank.
Yeah, I think the Kaufeld Farm could warrant half a day, potentially a full day. But I am hesitant to have it replace the retreat, because I think the retreat serves an ongoing annual function. So not that I love meetings, but I think we might have to just look at the Kaufeld as a one-off or whatever as an additional long day. But I wouldn't advocate for having it replace our retreat.
Yeah, it feels to me, if we've done all of the homework ahead of time, that a half a day should be fine for coffee. Do we usually have a retreat that's all day or a half a day?
Usually it goes from 9 to 2 or 9 to 3 or something like that.
Okay.
3/4 day.
Okay. So do we have, going on what Miles brought up, do we have a, do we have or do we need, I know we work climate change and resiliency and all of that, we're working it into our various stewardship plans and stewardship activities. Do we need an overall policy about how that would inform how it's going to be prioritized, or how it informs acquisitions, or where do we go with this?
Well, I'm going to sidestep the issue of a policy. But one of the things we definitely need to have more discussion about is the impact on the stewardship program. Because up to this point, a lot of our stewardship has been focused around public access. We've done some ecological work, particularly around Gary Oak systems. But what we're talking about here is something that's a lot bigger. If we're really going to get into doing a lot of forest management in particular to try and deal with climate change issues and resilience. So it's certainly going to mean a lot more money. It's going to be a lot more complicated, but that's a great topic for the commission to hash through.
Can we plan an October retreat? And then, since we know the report for Kaufeld's going to come in sometime in October, and we would deal with that in November, can we just, because I think our retreat is often in October, is it not? Yeah, so can we go ahead with October retreat planning? And this would be one of the topics that would be on that agenda.
I would agree with that. I think that's good. I think Doug has given us I don't know if he gave us a presentation or maybe I've gotten follow-up materials from him, but I feel like I would like to hear from a steward, or whether it's Aaron or someone from stewardship, to kind of give us an overview, to launch this off and basically say, here's what we're doing, here's what we think we should be doing, here's what it will take to, here's our maximum that we could be doing, here's what we're doing, and help us figure out how to prioritize, where to prioritize. I'm not sure that the commission would just be ready to just talk about it, or maybe Lincoln would be the one to do that. But I feel like I need to be brought up to speed on, you know, one is soils, another is forest, and what else is there? I need more education.
That's why I think it would be a good retreat topic, because we'd have the time to get the information. We don't have to make big decisions at the retreat. But we commit the time to learn and to make some plans moving forward.
Okay, that sounds good.
If we are putting climate change on the agenda, I think that we should break it down. And in my mind, one of the big issues that I hear a lot of talk about, particularly right now and with good reason, is wildfire prevention and fuels management. And that alone is a real armful and would be huge for us. So I would focus on that one.
Yeah, I think we would have materials in advance of the retreat. You know, we've had the assessment done on turtleback, for example. And Peter has been working with Carson Springer to try and prioritize. You know, Carson left to his own devices could spend all of our money in a year with no problem. But trying to prioritize what we need to do with turtleback with regard to fuels reduction and trying to do some thinning for forest health is really going to be key. But that assessment has been completed. So,
and then I would wonder, are controlled burns part of that? And we can learn about it, but you know, we're trying to suppress. Should we be doing controlled burns? I don't know.
Yeah, you know, that's obviously that's a longer conversation.
Yes, I get it.
It's tough out here to do controlled burns because of the small property sizes and the requirements for having trained crews. So for example, the Fish and Wildlife Service in doing prairie restoration work, they gave up on doing controlled burns out here because they just couldn't get crews out here to do a burn. On the one hand, also it's pretty clear that you can't just do a burn and it's going to come back as a beautiful native prairie. You know, you have to actually plant stuff and deal with invasives, and it's pretty complicated.
Okay.
And very expensive.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so I mean, Krista, I agree with your idea. Other commissioners agree that's a good retreat focus and timely, and yes, good. I think having a singular topic would be a good use of our focus, our time. Thank you, Miles, for bringing that up.
That's all Jim.
Thank you, Jim, for channeling through Miles. Okay, anything else to talk about, or are we ready to pull the plug? I think we're good.
Great.
Okay. Good meeting, everybody, and see you next month.